Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. If you're new here, I'm Dave, this is Olive, and we would like to have a little fun while we talk about books, mostly. And so we're about a week into Horror Mayhem, so we figured we would do our week one wrap-up. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, Horror Mayhem is a reading event in which we focus on short horror fiction, in part to try to encourage those that aren't really familiar with the genre to dip their toes in and give it a try. I myself had never tried horror until a couple years ago, and it is a genre that I currently really enjoy. So that's the idea. There are weekly prompts that you do not need to follow, but I will leave them below in case you would like some, helpful guidance. There's also a bingo card where you can check off different themes as you hit them in the stories that you read, just to make it a little more fun, and again just to provide a little bit of just to steer you a little bit if you need that. But the main thing is just to read some short horror fiction, just to try it out and just to have a good time. So we are doing our week one wrap up. So this week we read one novella and two short stories. We've started the next couple things, but we will talk about those in the next video. So right now we're going to talk about the ones that we finished. So the first one is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. So the weekly prompt for week one was local horror. We didn't really have anything local, so we just read this instead. And again, no hard rules with participating in Horror Mayhem. You can jump in now and you don't need to follow any rules, just read some short horror. So this book is Stephen Graham Jones, very prolific, very popular horror author. We only read one other book of his called Night of the Mannequins, which was more of a lighter, fun horror read, and we had a good time with that. This one's a little more serious, and so we enjoyed this as well. So basically, Olive and I, we liked this, we didn't love it. And so I'll try to tell you what it's about. It's a little hard because I'm not 100% sure myself. But this story, so basically, what the jacket will tell you is this is about a Blackfeet teen that is one night in his living room, he sees what appears to be the ghost of his dead father step through a doorway. And so the book is, it's kind of a little bit hard of a book to try to wrap your head around exactly what it's trying to say. It seems to be a book that's mostly about grief. And not even so much in the sense of grief. Yes, grief for lost people, but also really more so even, I think, grief about lost identity, lost cultural identity, and the loss of basically what could have been. I think this is there was a quote that it appears early on where they're talking about some of his father's sisters are talking about him, and they're talking about, he could have been a great this, or could have been a great that. And he's reflecting back, he says, "That's how you talk about dead people, though, especially dead Indians. It's all about squandered potential, not actual accomplishments." And I think that theme sums up a major theme of this book. It's sort of like the lost, like I said, the lost what could have been. This is set in. He's a teen now, but he lost his father when he was very young. And his mother moved them off the reservation. So they live elsewhere now. It's his mother who works a lot to support them as a single parent. And his disabled brother, his brother that experiences some challenges that he tries to be somewhat of a caretaker and protector for his brother. And he sleepwalks. And so one night when he's walking, he sees this image of his dead father, like I said, step through a doorway from one room to another. And so, he ends up seeing, his father or hearing his father at different times throughout the story. And, it primarily is, him sort of, as he is processing a lot of, he's processing the fact that his father is gone, and his kind of culture is his cultural history is missing now, and he takes it upon himself really to try to help give his father's ghost like some substance to try to bring him back. And that's why he talks to his mother, that his father's back. And so you see him go through a number of different things. And what happens is, so his his father had passed away when he was little, and what happens is, very, very minor spoiler here, not really, it's just to help talk about it, is at the end there's a time jump, and they let you know that he had his own son, and his own son passed away, and you never meet that character, and that's not an integral part of the story, but it's relevant for what happens and the ending of the story, and how you see how he has been processing things. And so you have this individual his life is kind of bracketed by these deaths, right? He suffered a death as he suffered a loss as a son with the passing of his father, and then as a father with the passing of his son. And you don't see so much of the grief over the loss of these individuals, but like I said, kind of loss about what was lost with them. And so, like, when he imagines when he is seeing his father and is talking about his father, it's all in the context of not who his father was, but he sees them all in, like, the cultural regalia, and being a great dancer, and like a ceremonial dancer and everything, and not who he was, but who he could have been. And so, he goes through these stages of, seeing his father, wanting to bring him back, and then, learning what has happened, and, and then, you see the way that he processes all this, and it is part of Ghost Story, because that part of it is very eerie, with all the imagery where he thinks he sees his father, or hears his father, but that all has a very dreamlike quality, because he's kind of in these altered states while he's doing that. But at the same time, he is an extremely unreliable narrator, right? He's a teen who has experienced this kind of loss, and so there's a number of hard things that happen, and you're kind of always left wondering, what is he seeing, what is he doing, and so it's eerie and kind of contagious in that way, or not contagious, but kind of compelling in that way. But it's it's one of those ones, like, you finish it and you're kind of like trying to wrap your head around exactly what transpired. So that's all I'll say about it, because it's a novella. I don't want to ruin it, and like I said, only understood it to a certain degree. So we did enjoy reading it. We didn't absolutely love it. I know a lot of people do, and so we're hoping to love it more. But yeah, I mean, it was an engaging read. Okay, then we read a couple short stories. The first short story we mentioned, we were working out of in our announcement video, that we were working out of a couple of anthologies. So one of the ones we're working out of is Stephen King's Night Shift. This is an old collection of Stephen King short stories. I think this came out in the early 70s, if I recall correctly. Yeah, mid 70s. So this is, and some of these stories appeared in other publications in the early 70s. And so the story we read out of this, because our buddy Gareth over Book Songs and Other Magic had mentioned it, was Quitters, Inc. And this is a fun story. This is not a deep story, but this is just like a fun horror story, where we're introduced to this character who he wants to quit smoking. And he sees an old acquaintance of his right at the beginning in an airport. And the old acquaintance looks great, looks very healthy, and he had gone through this, and he had quit smoking. And so he gives our main character some contact information to go see these people at Quitters, Inc. to help him quit, which apparently they are very effective at doing. And so So he does, and they have some pretty brutal methods. So it's pretty. I won't say any more than that because I don't know it's a short story. I don't want to spoil it, but it's pretty cool. They have interesting methods to cure the addiction. So when I finished reading it, I was like, I know this story, but I don't know how because I have never read this book before, and then again, our buddy Gareth reminded us that that story was part of a movie called Cat's Eye, where they used a couple Stephen King stories. So that's clearly where I saw it. I didn't go watch it again yet, but that's no doubt where I saw it. So I'm gonna go watch it again. The same sort of thing happened to me recently with The Handmaid's Tale. I knew I had seen a scene, even though I hadn't read the book, and it turned out I guess many years ago I had seen the old movie. So yeah, I'm gonna go watch that again just for kicks. But that was a good story. And then we also read a story out of this book, Deathbed Stories by Harlan Ellison. And this was actually the story we read out of here is the whimper of whipped dogs, and we read that one. It's one of the first stories, but we read that because a couple of people have we asked for advice on horror. This is not all horror stories, but we knew there were some tough horror stories in here, so we asked for advice. A couple of people mentioned it. So if you were one of those, thank you for recommending it because we did really enjoy the story. The story was, like I said, the Whimper of Whipped Dogs. This was first published in an anthology called Bad Moon Rising, an anthology of political forebodings, which I think was really more of a science fiction anthology, but that was published in 1973. But it was reprinted here in Deathbed Stories. Really good story. What this was about is it follows a young woman that lives in New York City, and she lives in an apartment complex where there's a courtyard, and she looks out her window one year into the courtyard and witnesses the brutal stabbing of a mid-30s woman, and she watches this and she notices other people in other apartments in the complex watch this rather than do anything about it. And so then you follow her a little bit as she meets one of the other witnesses and interacts with some other people. And you see what kind of life that she and the others are living, the kind of sort of rough, impersonal life living in New York City. And it was almost like a little bit of a commentary on life in New York City and what it takes to survive as a New Yorker. But it was very eerie. It obviously was disturbing. It was somewhat rough in a couple different spots, but it's there's like a supernatural element to it, and it's based. I don't want to give too much away, but it's sort of like sort of these people, sort of like submitting, your relationship with the divine almost being based on what you need, and based on what these particular New Yorkers need in order to live in an environment like this. And I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to say any more than that. But it was really good story and a bit of a disturbing story. So I would highly recommend it. The Whimper of Whipped Dogs. So that was what we read this first week. That was all we had time for this week. But actually, we started a couple next couple things, but we'll talk about that next time. So yeah, it was the novella Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, the short story Quitters Inc. from Stephen King's Night Shift, and the Whimper of Whipped Dogs from Harlan Ellison's Deathbed Stories. Like I said, we enjoyed all of them, so we're off to a good start for Horror Mayhem. Let us know if you've read any of these, and if you have any opinions on them. We would love to hear it. If you're participating in Horror Mayhem, let us know what you've read or what you're planning on reading. We're very curious to see what everybody else is doing. And like I said, if you're just jumping in now, we will leave links below. We will leave the prompts below and links to copies of the bingo cards in case you want to print any of those out. So If you don't have anything substantive to say, you can always leave Olive a puppy emoji because she always likes to see those, right? Falling asleep again. I feel like you're just waiting. You're kind of just holding out, acting tired till you get one of these, right? Is that what you're doing? Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. See you again very soon. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.